as the new people come in, they're not going to learn the culture from me or from you. They're going to learn the culture from the people that they're next to every day. And as long as we have people that are spreading those values, doing the right thing, working together, kind of enjoying what you're doing and who you're doing it with. If you're going to spend 40 or 50 hours a week someplace, you might as well do it with people you like to be with. And as long as we've got that, I think the rest of it will work itself out.
Welcome to SSR On Air. I'm Mike Rogers, your host for this monthly podcast brought to you by Smith Seckman Reed. Tune in as I interview leaders, colleagues, and clients about what is going on internally at SSR and in the larger engineering community. Well, good morning, Rob.
Good morning, Mike. How are you?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm well.
Good. So today we're here with Rob Barrick, who is about to retire from SSR. Previous CEO. How many years were you CEO, Rob?
32.
32 years as the CEO here at SSR. So we're going to try to dig deep here a little bit and just talk a little bit about your time here and the things that you accomplished and where you see some things heading for us and that kind of thing. So simple stuff. I'm going to just hit you with a few questions and let you pontificate a little bit on things. So.
I'm happy to ramble.
I know. So I would say the first question is just tell us a little bit about how you ended up here at SSR way back in the day.
Well, there was a girl involved.
Usually there is.
When I was 17 and I was a lifeguard at a swimming club, there was a young girl out there that I sort of dated a little bit in the summer, and her name was Shannon Smith, and she was Lester and Catherine Smith's daughter. And when I graduated from college 4 or 5 years later, my first job, I worked for a manufacturer's rep part-time while I was in school and for about 5 months after I got out. And one day I was wading around in raw sewage in Harriman, Tennessee, thinking, maybe this isn't what I want to do for the rest of my life. And I called her mother, who was in the placement office at Vanderbilt, and said, hey, even though I've already graduated, can I come back and meet the recruiters on campus when they come in next fall? And she said, sure. She said, well, why don't you call Lester? They started an engineering firm. They may be looking for an engineer. So I called Lester, and Lester said, let me hook you up with Tom Seckman and Andy Reed. And so I climbed out of a lift station pit down at the Metro Sewage Treatment Plant one day and came in and interviewed with them, greasy and smelling bad. And Andy loved me, and they hired me. And that's how I came to SSR.
There you go. What year was that?
1974.
1974.
I graduated in May and started at SSR in November. So my first job lasted about 5 months, and my second one lasted 47 years.
It's not bad.
Yeah, I got lucky.
You did. So how did you spend the first few years here at SSR? What were you doing, and where were you?
Well, that was a great thing. So I came in November. In February, they sent me and Holdaway to Syracuse, New York, to carrier school for 8 weeks. Mm-hmm. Snowed 80 inches. I learned to ski. A couple of Canadians taught me to ski. And by the end of that first year, I think that was my first trip to Saudi Arabia. We were doing work for HCA over there at the King Faisal Hospital and sending troops in and out. And I did 4 trips over there working on hospitals. As a matter of fact, we had a contract to open an office over there, and Kenneth Dixon and I were going to man that office, and we couldn't quite negotiate the fee. And so after I was there for a couple of months, they brought me home. I designed hospitals. I was known as kind of the junk man. We did 95% of our business was healthcare work. 80% was HCA. And I did the stuff that floated in that wasn't healthcare related. I did largest recording studio in Nashville at Benson Publishing Company was one of my first jobs. I did turned a civil defense center or a post office in Athens, Alabama, into a civil defense center. Designed a bunch of solar branch banks and welcome stations. This was back when Al Gore was a congressman and he was touting the solar stuff. So I kind of became the energy solar guy.
Yeah.
So I was for 5 or 6 years. I was a mechanical engineer. Got to do a little project management. Got to travel around the world.
Yeah.
Then in, I guess, 1970, 1980 maybe, I've been here about 6 years. I became the head of the mechanical department. Now, understand that when I came to SSR, we were 25 people, and
Right.
So it wasn't that big a company, and it wasn't that big a deal.
So it wasn't too long after that when you ended up in Houston, right?
I did.
You and Clay Seckman.
Our first strategic plan came about 1982, 1982. And what happened, HCA had one architect, one engineer, and one contractor for 14 years, and they just sent us all over the country and all over the world doing hospitals. And they got in some trouble about kickbacks and stuff, and so they opened it up to 4 architects and 4 engineers and 4 contractors. And we woke up one day and said, if they get mad at us, they could just pull the work and we would toast. So we decided in 82 that we needed to diversify. In 83, we bought Lewis Engineers, which is where Steve Lane came from. He was a young, brand new engineer with Willis Lewis. And we got into the civil environmental business through them. And in 83, we decided to open a branch office in Houston, Texas, because we had a client down there that was a small HCA that said, if you'll come here, we'll give you all of our work. So John Ross and Clay and I packed up and moved to Houston. And the company, Lifemark, was sold to AMI in Beverly Hills, California, a month before we arrived. And so we went to Houston in the middle of an oil recession, and I became a Fuller Brush salesman trying to get MEP work down there.
Yeah. Yeah, that must
a great experience.
That must have been a challenge.
Well, it was scary, but a lot of fun. That was one of the great things about the founders. They would take a risk with young people, and they were progressive thinking about things like that.
So you were down there for a few years, and then they hit you with a big question. Ask you to be the CEO.
I went down there. Tom and I made a deal. I said, look, I'll go to Houston, but I want a 5-year pullback. After 5 years, I want to be able to say, bring me home. And he said, okay. And so I was there about 2 years, and I was just having a great time. We had 8 or 10 people, and business was good. And I liked Houston, and I'd met some really good people there that are still close friends. Had a little house down on the Matagorda Bay where I could fish and hunt and mess around. And so I told Tom, I'm letting you out of the deal. I'm good to stay. Houston's home. And about 6 months later, he came down and said, well, we've been talking and we're thinking maybe you might want to come back and be president. And I didn't tell him no, but I didn't tell him yes either. I said, I need to think about that. I'm young. I'm having a good time here. And he came back about 6 months later and said, no, we really, really want you to do this. And so I said, okay. The founders, they great guys and loved engineering, but they really didn't enjoy running a business. They took turns being president. It was kind of like, all right, you do it for a couple of years and you be in the penalty box and we'll go get the engineer and stuff like that. He was president for a long time. Tom was kind of the glue that held it all together. He was the guy that got them together and started it. And he was president most of the time, but I think Andy did a 2-year stint then Lester did a 2-year stint, and then Tom came back in and did it. And when he got tired of it, they decided to come get me as a 34-year-old.
Yeah. Yeah.
Turned me loose.
So when you think back of the founders and you think about kind of the things that make SSR click and run now, how do you view them? What do you see when you look back at them and how we are now? I mean, take a look at our values. How do they align?
They were really different people. And some people don't know this. There were two Smiths. There was a Bobby Smith and a Lester Smith, and they're not related. Lester was an electrical engineer that had worked at Vanderbilt, who was a client, and Tom and Andy had worked at Carrier and then came to I.C. Thomason, and Bobby Smith was Tom's draftsman. And when it became clear that Mr. Thomason wasn't going to let him have some ownership, they said, well, we'll go do this on our own. And I've said this often, Tom Seckman taught me about God. Lester Smith taught me to run a business. Andy taught me about engineering, and Bobby taught me about marketing and that people do business with your friends. And even though they were very different people, they liked each other. They laughed, they smiled, they played together, they camped with their kids together. They were. I never, in all the years I was with them, heard one of them say a cross word or a derogatory word about the other one. They defended each other, took care of each other, and so that created, by example, it's just the culture that you see here, where there's no backbiting, just people wanting to work together. And it was so evident, that, and I so much appreciated it that I often said, my goal is to try to grow this company and not mess up that culture, diversify it, spread it out, but not lose that sense of relationships that they certainly had and fostered.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you look back at that and you think about, their values and the way that they treated people, what's the thing that you connected with the most out of those?
Well, if you look at the values, the way we define them today, and we use verbs as actions, and you could go back and look at our previous 4 or 5 strategic plans, and you'll see different words, but the same themes are there, and the working together. They just personified that. That Tom would be designing something. He'd walk up and down the hall and ask 4 people, what do you think about this? Yeah. And when a guy 20 years older than you is asking you, what do you think about this cooling tower? It just, it created this notion that we share what we know, get opinions. Nobody's hoarding the knowledge. We're spreading it out. Bobby, think about relationships. Bobby always said, and he was the marketing guy, and back in the 70s, it was considered bad form if you were a lawyer or a doctor or an engineer, to actually, market yourself or sell yourself or advertise. That was just, but Bobby said, people do business with their friends, and it was so true.
Well, it's interesting because back in the day when I came here 21, 22 years ago, a lot of the attraction to me was the integrity that SSR had and that you had. I mean, and I think I told you this not long after I got here, is that just the presence and the integrity and the way you approached the employees and everybody was kind of part of the team. What's good for the hive is good for the bee, I like to say, because it's true. I think if you're doing something that's good for everybody, it's usually good for you too. So that definitely attracted me to come in here as well. When you look back on your time here, a lot of years spent, So it's kind of probably hard to pick, but what would you say is the thing that you're most proud of, accomplishment wise, through the whole career? That's a tough one.
I've
It's
got
probably a lot of things, right?
in hindsight, and I've been out of the CEO role now for 3.5 years, so I've had time to think about what worked, what didn't work. For 32 years, one of my drives was to diversify this business. Not that healthcare is not a great market, not that it wasn't a great ride, but you just don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. And when we bought Memphis, they were a regional firm. They were a mile wide and an inch deep, but they did a little bit of everything. We took a 4-person transportation business down there, and that just worked really around the Memphis area. And it's 50 some odd people all over the state, Georgia, Florida. Those watching those businesses grow, um, uh, that's really a cool thing to watch.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that if I did anything right here, I picked some good people. And this notion of watching people grow. The founders, they invested in us. They gave us opportunities. They took risk, and I look at that notion of seeing people come here and grow here and take advantage of opportunities. That symbiotic relationship of they've done well and the company has done well because of what they've done. That brings me a lot of joy. A lot of joy.
Yeah. Yeah, I would second that. I think it's watching people grow and putting opportunities in front of them is exciting to watch. And a lot of times they take it and they do things with it that you didn't expect. And it turns out even better than you could imagine, right?
Yeah, and we tried things that didn't work.
Sure.
Lighting consulting. I can give you a list of design build powerhouses, lighting consulting. But we tried. We took a swing at them, and some of them worked really well.
Yeah. Some of them came out good.
Yeah.
Good. So how do you see when you look forward, and I know you have some vision too, how do you see SSR down the road, our future? What are we headed for?
SSR is in many ways right now, I think, both at a crossroads and set up better than we have ever been to really explode. And you can say, well, that's a scary thing, but you can also say that's a wonderful thing because that creates opportunity throughout the organization. One domino moves, and then you got to fill all of those positions. And so I think this is a place that's got great opportunity for the individuals here. I also think that we have created a infrastructure or a business that is scalable. We have the back of office to grow this business to 1,000, 1,500 people without really breaking a sweat. We built a foundation that is rock solid. It's good.
Yeah. I would agree. So, as part of that growth and the things that we've been doing to get ready for that, we've been hiring a lot of people. We've got a lot of young folks coming in, or even if they're not young, they're new to SSR. So, just some parting words of advice or thoughts that you would have towards new people here, young people entering, the engineering field that we've got growing here, and just some thoughts of yours.
When I became president, we were about, I think we were 75 people. And at that time, I could know everybody and their kids and their dog and all that kind of stuff. And as we grew, I realized when we got to be about 250 that I really couldn't know everybody. And it lost something for me. I mean, there was this notion that we're going to become large and impersonal, all that kind of stuff. anyway, 5 or 6 years ago, we started doing, actually around the last strategic plan in 2014, we started being more intentional about how we brought people on board. And we started touching base with them rather than just doing what they did to me, which was saying, there's your desk, call me if you get any questions. We really got intentional about how we brought people on board, checked with them, how's it going,
Right.
and made them feel welcome and connected. I got to, at the 60-day, the second touch base, I got to sit and talk with them, which I just found delightful because I got this chance to, no matter where they were in the organization, sit down and spend an hour with them and find out about them, talk about their onboarding experience, and tell them a little bit about SSR. What I can tell you, and I guess I've done 250 of those in the last.
Wow.
And what I can tell you is we've hired some really great people, and whether they're, just out of school or whether they've been someplace else before, what really is heartening to me is that they still hear what I saw coming into a 25-person organization. That, I ask them, what's the best thing about SSR? I say, it's the people. As the new people come in, they're not going to learn the culture from me or from you. They're going to learn the culture from the people that they're next to every day. Yeah. And as long as we have people that are spreading those values, doing the right thing, working together, kind of enjoying what you're doing and who you're doing it with. If you're going to spend 40 or 50 hours a week someplace, you might as well do it with people you like to be with. And as long as we've got that, I think the rest of it will work itself out.
Well, I do want to say thanks, Rob, for coming in and sharing some words of wisdom for everyone, and it's much appreciated. And I know I appreciate your time here in the 20 some odd years I've spent with you. So thank you again for all that, and thanks to everyone for tuning in and listening and watching. And I guess we'll do it again soon. Thanks for joining us for this episode of SSR On Air. We hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. You can also connect with us on social media. Links to everything can be found in the show's notes. Take care, everyone. See you next time.